there are some projects where we get to staff multiple people. You could have 4 people on a project, you could have more. That's the best way to build organic relationships, right? That's what mimics working at Google. That's what mimics being in a university setting. And these are the examples where people actually naturally build really strong connections and relationships that can be valuable over the course of their lifetime, and both in terms of personal connection and like future opportunities. And then beyond that, it's how do you really think about creating real organic relationships? And that has to be like not just relationships for relationship's sake. And so that's where we really think about fostering community through things that people both care about and are excellent at.
Welcome to Generation Builders podcast, brought to you by Software. I'm your host, Mariam. The goal of the show is to unpack and share the superpowers and lessons of today's most successful software companies and discuss how the next generation will use and build software without code. I interview world-class product, growth, and community experts who help build some of the best companies of today. Hello, hey Jaclyn, welcome. I'm excited to have you here with me today. So, Jaclyn Rice Nelson, hopefully I pronounced your name correctly.
Nailed it.
Is the co-founder and CEO of Tribe AI, a community of top engineers and data leaders who use AI to solve real-world problems. She's also a co-founded Coalition Operations, an early-stage fund and operator network. And prior to this, Jaclyn spent nearly 8 years at Google, including 3 years at CapitalG, where she built the firm's operations team and leveraged the network of 50,000 Googlers to support portfolio companies. Jaclyn, let's dive into your background, and would love to hear your story, maybe from your own words, just a bit, and then we dive into what you're doing with Tribe AI to start with.
Awesome. Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Jumping in on my background, you mentioned I spent most of my career at Google. I actually started my career in banking, moved to San Francisco, and joined Google, and was exposed to the world of tech, which frankly I knew nothing about. I started at Google on the ad side of the business, so kind of go to market, where Google makes most of their money, and supporting some of the largest tech B2B enterprise companies, which meant really like thinking about how they could use AdWords or their like digital marketing spend to drive more value for the company, basically making their marketing more efficient. I actually had an opportunity to move from doing that for these large enterprise companies like Salesforce, Oracle, Adobe, some of these kind of behemoths, and actually start working with tech B2B emerging startups. And the idea was if we could actually change their marketing efficiency, that we could actually help these companies grow faster. And as a result, they would then spend more on Google AdWords. And so what that meant for me was exposure to the startup world for the first time. And I totally caught the bug. Instead of, some of these big companies where it took months to get like an approval, if I had a new idea on a startup, working with a startup, and I was working with Box and DocuSign as 2 notable companies really early days, I just became an extension of their team. They were hungry. They were all super aligned on one goal, and anyone who could help them reach that goal, and any idea, like you could move on it that day, that hour, that minute. And I just thought the pace, the kind of like camaraderie and kind of team mission and alignment was so energizing. And I also just got to learn so much more because of that velocity. At that point, I thought about leaving Google to join a startup myself, and actually got pulled back in to help launch a startup within Google, which was a consumer marketplace product. And that was actually the first time I worked with an engineering team. So I went over as one of the first business people. There were already 30 engineers who'd been working on this product, like 1, maybe 2 product people at the time, and then like me. So I had sort of helped navigate how to launch this product, bring it to market, And honestly, it was a whole different world, because on the ad side, you're very segmented. Really, I spoke only to business people. And so here it was like there were no business people. So
And you had all
there
the
was
power
like,
to do any type of initiative,
exactly.
right? Anything
Yeah.
around
It was just like,
helping to grow and distribute the product.
exactly. And, AdWords, you're not bringing it to market. You can make it slightly better and hopefully make, more money for the company. But this is like a whole different ballgame. You're really building. So even though a startup within a large company is a little bit of an oxymoron, it really did feel like that alignment, that speed, that velocity that I craved. And it was still one of my favorite work experiences I've ever had. We launched the product in classic Google form. Everything has to be big, billions of dollars. And that is a very hard thing to do within a big company. As you know, running a startup, you start small and you build, and you are not built big overnight. And so unfortunately, we didn't meet like Google scale. And honestly, we just didn't have product market fit, and didn't have the sort of ability to find it within, a big company.
Mm-hmm.
And so grew that product and team to like 150 people full time. And then unfortunately had to shut it down. Amazing experience. Still a great idea that should happen. And a team that I'm still incredibly close to. But through that experience, I really like knew I had found my world in startups, and was looking for something similarly entrepreneurial, ideally at that time staying within the Google family. And I found an opportunity at CapitalG, it was formerly Google Capital. It was a new venture arm that had just been launched, focused on, instead of early stage companies like Google Ventures focuses on. The idea was that what Google's best at actually isn't usually starting things, as sadly I learned firsthand, but scaling things. Scaling is like just what they nail, going global, scaling, your back end, technical, engineering, security, scaling HR and people and recruiting processes, truly everything that you need to really be an enormous business. And the idea was that we could invest in the best growth stage, later stage tech companies, because we would have this ability to advise them on how to become even bigger. And the core theory was that we could do that by leveraging the playbooks, resources, and people within Google. And this was kind of just an idea. And so I joined along with one other person from Helpouts, and an amazing mentor of mine, Gretchen Howard, to help build this model that was truly just a theory into reality. And we did. We built a 50,000 plus person expert network, as you mentioned. Worked with some of the best companies in tech, Stripe, Airbnb, Robinhood, et cetera, on these scaling playbooks. And then for me, it was also where I saw this pattern around data science and machine learning. So we could help our companies with anything that Google had core competencies in. But because we were Google, or tied to Google, companies came to us with their technical questions. And data science and machine learning kind of like bubbled up to the top of the list. And no matter how technically sophisticated these companies were, Silicon Valley based, huge engineering teams, Google as an investor, it was still really hard to navigate how to get value out of data science and machine learning, where to be applying these technologies, and even how to be assessing this talent, where to find them, et cetera. And so I kind of like had parked that idea in my brain, but it wasn't until I decided that growth stage was amazing. I had learned this scaling playbook, but I didn't know how you got to the point where you needed to scale. And I really wanted to fill out the rest of, that full kind of startup life cycle. And so I left to go on an early stage journey myself. I joined a Series A fintech company, felt like I needed to see a business that was not a startup within Google. I started investing personally in lots of early stage startups as a means to accelerate my own learning. And then eventually I founded my own company, which is not CapitalG, but which is TribeAI. and focused on that kind of idea I had parked. And then in addition, I have, as we mentioned, started Coalition Operators, which is really an extension of my interest in investing. And the way these, we'll kind of talk about both of them, but the way these two ideas really come together and connect to my background is this idea around the power of talent networks. So that's really what I built at CapitalG. It's like advisory talent network, and both Tribe and Coalition are solutions that really bring together under leveraged talent and activate them through a community or sort of vetted expert network model, where we are providing core solutions where there are gaps in the market.
Yeah, thank you so much for for the comprehensive kind of intro. And I want to dive in a bit into specific areas, maybe in a more detail. But what I really like is that you have taken basically your experience from Capital G and kind of created new model of how to access talent in different ways, right? Whether it's for investment or startups or within your own company for engineers. I was always also wondering where did you come up with the idea of specifically machine learning engineers and data scientists are facing this problem that you're now trying to solve, because the same problem kind of exists in other roles as
Yep.
well, and it's accelerated
Sure.
even more. But I think, as you mentioned, probably even more acute within data science and ML engineers, because it's especially more difficult talent to find, very less spread or less experience in the world. Anyway, so let's start from the coalition fund first. So why did you start coalition operators fund, together with some of the other amazing women that I know are on the board and on the founder also group? Why did you start in the first place, and what gap did you really notice in the market that you tried to solve with the new fund?
Yeah. I think on this, I mentioned I started investing individually. I think two things were true. One is I had been at a fund, and so I knew what it was like to invest with other people. So while I was getting a ton of value and learning from investing on my own, it was a little less fun, a little more lonely. I kind of missed having a peer group to debate ideas and talk about why something may or may not be a good investment, and really think through the attributes of what makes a successful founder, and just have partners to really think through some of those ideas with. But that really wasn't the core problem. The core problem I identified was I started investing. Turned out I was like having a lot of fun. I really liked it. I loved the founders I was meeting. And I looked around at the cap tables that I was on and saw all men. And so, okay, like, you see a problem and you try to solve it. And so I would look to all of my smartest, most impressive friends in tech, other women who I knew, and suggest that they invest in deals with me. Hey, there's this amazing opportunity at, X company. Do you want to invest? Or have you ever thought about angel investing? And the answer was like a universal no, that isn't for me. And I felt like there was something here. So
But
not
why
only
was the
were
answer no? Was there something that preventing them from investing, or was that kind of the just even people didn't even think they should be investing?
it was a real mix. At the time, I didn't understand. Since we've actually done much broader surveys, we've surveyed hundreds of women, and we basically found three main barriers to investing. And this is sort of like the core of like really try to go deep on understanding a problem and know your target customer. The first was capital. This is like a sad reality. Women get paid less than men. And so not particularly surprising that they don't feel they have excess capital to be putting to work. And so there was a really significant capital constraint. And then the second was time. These were really like top of the line operators. CEOs of companies, VPs and beyond, at startups and large companies alike. And they were saying that they didn't really want to spend their time, really limited time, looking for companies or, even diligencing them. They wanted to spend their time really plugging in on supporting a founder on the things they knew best, the areas where they could be most helpful to a founder and to a business. And they felt like investing was actually kind of at odds with that. And then the third is access. Unsurprisingly, probably to you, venture can be extremely opaque. And most people didn't even really know how to go about the process of finding investments or even how to think about investing, cap table, construction valuation, et cetera. And so we saw this problem, which was that women weren't investing and weren't participating in the tech ecosystem as much as they could have. To be clear, that is a problem because this is where a lot of money gets made. And so we felt like not only were founders missing out from these women participating and being involved in their companies, but the women themselves were missing out because they didn't have the opportunity to be earning and building relationships and having career opportunities that would come out of being part of these companies. And so we set out to change this by building a solution that addressed each of these three barriers. And we did that in partnership with venture firms. So we basically identified that venture firms are an access point for both capital and opportunity investments, and partnered with Thrive and General Catalyst to, every time they do a deal, bring top women operators, people like your last guest, Christina Cordova of Notion and Stripe, onto cap tables. And instead of those women having to give up their own money to invest, the venture firm basically gives them a share of the investment that they have made. So they have equity in these companies, and the founder benefits by getting access to a operator who has skills in exactly the area they need help. And that kind of really becomes a win for the investor because the company they've invested in now has unique access to a top operator who can help them accelerate growth. The founder benefits because not only do they get diverse talent and a different sort of skill set and perspective, but they get access to this top tier executive. And the operator wins because they get access to a founder, a new way of thinking, without taking either financial risk or even career risk themselves, and get to build relationships with the venture firm in addition to the founders and companies.
Right. And yeah, that's a very smart model and really works kind of win-win for both sides. And one thing I really like about your firm is from the very beginning, when I spoke with you, it was how diverse, if not all, but I think most of the operators are women, right? And top experts
So
from
all
all
are
of them.
women. And of the women we've placed, I think over 50% are women of color as well.
From some of the top companies and real kind of with operator skill sets in specific, really vertical expertise in different areas, which definitely is extremely valuable for founders, I can imagine. How big is the operator network, and who are can you bring some example people involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So the network is now, we've placed kind of almost around 100 women on cap tables.
Last time it was 50 when we spoke, I think.
I know, yeah. So it's great. That means
Exactly.
both venture firms are investing in companies, and we are able to be matching incredible operational talent with amazing founders like you. So as far as some examples, let's see who I can highlight for you. Annie Pearl would be an example. She's probably one of the most in-demand product people in tech. She was most recently chief product officer at CapitalG. She was at Glassdoor before that. I think everyone wants her to come work for them. So she's incredible and has worked with multiple companies through Coalition. Another example is Stevie Case, who is currently the CRO of Vanta. an amazing security compliance company that I happen to be an investor in as well. And she's extra impressive because she had this incredible career in gaming as well, and is worth checking out because I'm just an enormous fan of hers. But recently started working with a really early stage, amazing startup. And that's an example of someone that they never would have access to. And these are two examples of people who are top of their game, best at what they do, and have unique experience in areas that the business needs for growth. So in the example of Stevie, they're two technical founders. They're amazing. They're so smart and bright and have this incredible wedge and idea. But they really could use a lot of help on the go-to-market side. And so who better than someone who has now done this at multiple companies and scaled to tremendous growth, plus has experience in sort of fraud and security, which are areas that they're really focused on. And same thing, I mean, the fact that early stage companies get to work with someone like Annie, who is probably, the most in-demand product person, and where product is a skill set that is so hard to find, and particularly at scale. I think just hopefully highlights how amazing some of these opportunities are and how truly it is a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, that sounds amazing because also on one hand, the access, but on the other hand, a lot of the times just operators who have already done that, been there, they usually are not easily joining startups, right? Unless they deeply are connected with the startup, maybe they know and they really like the business, they want to help out and they're ready to go back. Then I guess this close connection and really a relationship as well helps a lot and gives more opportunities.
I mean, one thing to add is like those are examples of more senior people. And I'm not speaking about either of them specifically when I say this, more from those sort of broad survey we did. Even the women who for us had made it in their careers, who were kind of top of the line execs, they still felt like all of these constraints were very real for them. And so even though we look at these people and say, well, Annie or Stevie, like you could get access to any cap table, the reality is they weren't. And so that is all to highlight like how big this gap is. And in an industry that talks about diversity so much, it just felt like there was so much effort and conversation with so little result. And so Coalition is our answer to two things. One, a commitment to really investing in the ecosystem. We do not just invest in diverse founders. We just invest in great companies and, have a desire to both learn by working with the best founders and also support these amazing companies. And then the other is really drive equity in tech and do more than just talk about the need for diversity, but actually have a path to changing some of the dynamics that have become self-perpetuating.
You perfectly summarized what I wanted to ask about, what are really the unfair advantages of the firm, and I think those two really stand out, and they definitely are unfair advantages compared to many other more standard firms that do investing. And there is also a big network, but in your case, it's kind of direct access to that network, and definitely valuable.
And people who are actually going to roll up their hands and do the work.
Exactly.
So, that's, I think, the difference between traditional advisors, which are nice names to put on a website or a pitch deck, and people who are actually going to do the work. So we have kind of productized what it means to be an advisor to one of these startups. We figure out exactly where the startup needs help. We document it. We figure out how much time one of these advisors actually is able to add, and where they can be most uniquely helpful. We align on what the hourly commitment is on kind of a monthly or quarterly basis, and set really clear goals for where those people are going to spend their time, so that there's, we even cut out the friction of like, how do these two people who are both really busy even figure out how to work together? We basically standardize it, align expectations from the beginning, and create a roadmap for people to just jump in and actually have productive working relationships.
Nice. That sounds great. Yeah. Sounds like you have figured out even the kind of operational stuff for them to just really come together and work
We're
together.
operators. So there are four of us. Three out of the four of us are actively running companies in addition to Coalition. This is what we care about. We're really building a venture firm as company builders. We're building a
Exactly, yeah.
solution that is what we as founders want.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. So that's a good gateway to move into Tribe AI, which is your own company that you co-founded, which I really like. We'll get into it, but I really like the way you look at it and the way you build it, because there's lots of parallels that one can make between the way you build it and the way you kind of look at it from the product perspective into more to compare to more product driven kind of product led companies. And
Yep.
yeah, I want to dive into that a bit. So in the first place, I think you call Tribe an AI lab, if I'm not mistaken, and where for top machine learning engineers and top data scientists. Can you maybe just share how you started Tribe? And you told us a bit why you started, but how
Yep.
did you start that, and how did you start it and attract it kind of talent in the first place?
Cool. So yeah, we sort of touched on this idea, which was basically on the company side. I really saw there was demand for this talent, and there were just lots of questions. Right, there was sort of the demand, and then the I don't know how to do it though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I was stunned by was how basic some of the questions were. And that's not to put anyone down. That's actually to say that's really where the industry is and was, which is kind of like diversity. There's a lot of talking about it, and there's not a lot of doing. And the same was true for AI and machine learning. When you kind of look under the hood, you realize like there's not a lot of there. There's a lot of foundational data work happening, but not a lot of these sort of sophisticated use cases. And so that was really the gap I saw. And the question was, how do you solve that? What's the right solution set? And once I actually took the plunge and left Google, I started spending time in kind of like incubator and startup spaces in San Francisco. And that was incredibly illuminating for many reasons. One of them is that there were all of these people hanging out, just like hanging out all day long. And like they knew they didn't want to be on the corporate path. They had left these big jobs, but they didn't know what they were doing next. And they were exploring. South Park Commons is a place I have in mind. It started in San Francisco. There's now a location in New York. And that is where I encountered these world-class machine learning engineers who were, in my words, hanging out. So these are people who like had written the first client of TensorFlow and had worked at OpenAI and had these Google Brain, had these insane careers, and they wanted to do their own research. They were hanging out, so I hung out next to them and started asking them questions like, hey, how do you pay your rent? Like, I'm sure you made a lot of money in your last jobs, but like, truly, like, how do you do this? And the answer was really surprising to me. It was every once in a while, a friend will send me kind of like a consulting opportunity, and I'll do it, and then I'll kind of like pay for my life for a few months, and then they'll send me another one, and we'll do that. Great, that's amazing. I need those friends. But like, what would you do if you needed if you wanted to make money? Like, what would you do if you needed one right now? And they were like, I have no idea. And so I was great. Well, I like to sell. You seem like something I could sell. Like, if I got you an opportunity, would you do it? And they're like, sure. Within some like defined criteria. And that was truly how I started. I kind of like was like an agent for like, these top people, and like a talent agent. There was this amazing person. We found an opportunity, and that's truly how Tribe started. And I teamed up with my co-founder, Noah, who had previously worked at Gigster and Brain Trust, which are kind of models that leverage like a much bigger, but kind of like massive talent network of engineers. And I had done something similar at CapitalG. And we really saw an opportunity to take this talent network based approach, except really curated. So, get to this like top 1% of talent. And to your point on, okay, but there's sort of like supply demand imbalances in lots of industries. Why data science and machine learning? It was because this was like the top of the food chain, right? It was the hardest to find of the things that were already hard to find. And so we started with a really defined area and kind of like wanted to just go deep on nailing this exact problem and just kept the group really tight. Started with a curated group of individuals who were top of their field and then grew by word of mouth. And now, fast forward, we are like under 300 of these top machine learning engineers, data scientists, data engineers, ML ops, kind of every data product managers, every function you need to do an end-to-end data or machine learning project. We create opportunities for them to work with companies of all sizes, from startups through to private equity firms and large enterprise companies, public companies. And typically those are fractional opportunities, consulting opportunities. In many cases, those do convert into full-time recruiting opportunities. Because even though they're not looking for full-time jobs, if there is a really strong fit, generally, those relationships just become natural versus if you started from a recruiting context where people don't know each other and are taking big risks.
Right, that makes so much sense. What I really like about kind of this model, which I feel like you're imagining especially hiring engineering talent and generally the work for engineering talent, because in today's kind of modern world, we know there is two main directions typically in companies, right? Either one is you have to climb the company ladder and become more of the manager type, and then there's the other option of, in some companies, not in every company, to stay on a individual contributor path. And there, of course, you are still stuck to the company's 9 to 5 or whatever the rules in the companies are. But I think in today's modern world, especially with remote cultures, remote working, everyone is looking for more flexibility, whether they have different lifestyles, they have families, they want to travel, right? All of that is now becoming a norm. And I think in that context, it makes so much sense that I'm not tied to a specific company. And if I have the skill sets and deep expertise, I can still find the right opportunities. I can still work on different difficult problems. And that's kind of what the opportunity you're giving all of this talent. And in that kind of regard, how do you really find them and track them in the first place and retain them as well? Of course, there is the kind of intrinsic motivation, I assume, from some of these people, and they already, maybe some of them are not working, etc. But have you also seen cases where people would actually leave their jobs even from bigger companies to join your network because that's much bigger and better opportunity for them?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting question. So we think about the Tribe Network as having multiple personas within it, right? Everyone at the end of the day is an individual, but we definitely do have kind of prototypes of tribe members. And so one is kind of what you're describing, which is like a career consultant, someone who's kind of decided they want to step out off of, the treadmill of corporate life, and they want to work in a fractional way, and they've kind of decided this is their life. But Tribe kind of creates an avenue to make that easier. So they don't have to do any of the sales, marketing, et cetera, which technical people tend to not like and be less good at. And then the sort of second is a founder. So right now, my gosh, it's an amazing time to start businesses, particularly if you're technical and have some kind of unique insight, which we all do. And so there are many people who are founder curious, have ideas they want to work on, or think they want to start a company but don't know what it is yet, and want to learn and gain exposure to different problems. Or the third is they're working on a company, but maybe they're bootstrapping it in the beginning and they want to extend their runway. So they're kind of consulting on the side. And then the third is someone who maybe works in a big company, has an amazing job, but wants to dip a toe in the water and see if this world is for them.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they leave their
Interesting.
job and decide this is what they want to do for a period of time. Tribe can really be that bridge to make people feel comfortable taking that type of career risk and take more of a portfolio approach. And so absolutely, we definitely see that happening where people are leaving big companies or testing while they're at big companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your other question was how do we get these people and how do we retain them? And I think both are really interesting. So first of all, how we get them, feel incredibly lucky to say this, but they come to us. So at this point, I think we have built a product that resonates. We really have spent a lot of time understanding the personas of this talent and what they care about. They really care about freedom. Freedom to do the things they care about, which, could be those three personas and could be 800 other things because, we are all unique individuals optimizing for different things at different times. And we create that freedom through consulting. Freedom also not to do the work you're not as good at or don't like. Freedom to just do the things you are best at. We create community. So, in many cases, if you leave big companies like Google, my gosh, I felt this. All of a sudden you're like, wait, I was surrounded by all these brilliant, amazing people. Like, what do I do without them? And so we've really aggregated this incredible peer group. It's a group that others want to be a part of. We learned that from the beginning, right? Start with the best and they refer others who are the
Mm-hmm.
best and want to be around those people. And they want to be around them because they're people they can talk about their shared interests with, push one another. They can learn from one another on technical areas, as well as by actually working together. And then the third is learning. So really creating these opportunities and access points for people to learn by consulting across multiple different industries, across different types of companies. If you're someone who only worked at Google or Facebook, you've only seen that environment, but that's not the reality of most companies. And so by getting to work with a mid-market company or an enterprise company, you get to see a whole new world. And as someone who might be founder curious, think about how you might solve problems in that context rather than solving problems for the Googles of the world who have tremendous resources. And then, through community, we also create lots of opportunities for people to come together. We host events in this room behind me in New York. We get our groups together both in person and virtually on topics they really care about, or recent events around AI and education, really calling the community, understanding what's on their mind, and then bringing together programming that really enables them to get value from one another.
Yeah, nice. Which I wanted to dive a bit on the community side of things because it seems also, and one thing that you kind of look through of building this, you call it a product, which is interesting, right? So I see a lot of parallel with like typical product-led growth companies where maybe the product is an actual product. In this case, I think maybe can you help me understand what you call a
Yeah,
product is essentially everything together, like the people, the tech talent,
yeah,
community, and all of that, like the operational and the platform you have created around
yeah.
that.
I mean, you nailed it. I really do. So we have what is more traditional product, which is like a data product. So if you think about it, we're getting dozens of applications a day. We are letting in a tiny fraction of them with large language models and transcription and recordings. We're able to collect a ton of data from these conversations. We are able to index the skill sets of people who we let into the community, really identify what they are individually best at. We have built models that sort of like help us with matching, such that when we have a need from the customer, we're able to get down. Our community is not enormous, but I don't know 300 people individually anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows us to make the right match between the problem type and the talent that would be best suited to solve those problems. So that's traditional product. But then there's all this other stuff, which is what does the talent really care about, right? That's kind of what we need to ensure we are able to deliver for our customers. To deliver for our customers, we need to be able to surface talent quickly. But more importantly, for fulfillment, to make sure that actually everyone has an incredible experience working with Tribe, we need to make sure we have not just properly vetted the talent, but understood, really where they spike, such that we can get the right person on the right problem. And that's what makes the biggest difference in terms of the outcome. So that's huge. But then if you think about the talent experience, one of the biggest parts is, do they get staffed, right? If they want work, are they able to get work? Okay, that means we have to drive up our utilization of our talent network. What are the other ways that we can add value to them? Well, if they care about learning, so they care about earning, okay, that's the first. We need to get them opportunities. They also care about learning. And so how do we really hone in on creating products that help them learn? And so one example is, well, short-term consulting, typically recurring 20 hours a week type of projects are our bread and butter. And we also experimented with, like, what if we did these expert calls where venture firms got to do an hour with people in the community, and then even people who were dipping their toe in the water could sort of, have more opportunities. What are ways we can continue to expand our suite of products to give people solutions they care about and create, win-win opportunities between customers and the talent in ways they want to work? Recruiting is another version of that. And then I think the other is really like, how do, of course, we are creating opportunities for our customers, get a lot of value from our talent, but how do we create opportunities for talent to get opportunities from our talent, right? So
You mean between your own community,
within
between engineers, right?
the
Exactly.
community.
Because in true community, especially, I think one of the values as well is that they can build relationships with each other, right? And they leverage, whether it's learning or experience, expertise, or maybe even working together on some projects. And yeah, maybe that's another thing. Maybe you could bring also an example on that of how do you actually incentivize them really having this relationship, but creating this connection and working together maybe on some projects.
Yeah, it's funny. Someone recently called me like a community person, and I was like, what? Like, I am? And it's because I don't like community for community's sake. I find it like, everyone's just trying too hard. No one wants to go to the networking event. It's really hard to connect with people without any base to do that from. It feels unnatural. And I think that that's how most people describe community. And for me, actually, community is much more, this is going to sound bad, but I really believe it. Community has more value when it is transactional in some way. When there is something we are all trying to get from being together, and it enables you to focus on actually like creating real value.
So you call it a transaction. It's kind of a value, right? In the end,
it is, but
something that it doesn't have to be a monetary transaction, but if it's a learning transaction,
that's right.
transacting learning or experience, that's exactly also
right.
You can consider it a transaction. That's definitely the value that the people would see to join the community or to stay there.
Yes. So there are some projects where we get to staff multiple people. You could have 4 people on a project, you could have more. That's the best way to build organic relationships, right? That's what mimics working at Google. That's what mimics being in a university setting. And these are the examples where people actually naturally build really strong connections and relationships that can be valuable over the course of their lifetime, and both in terms of personal connection and like future opportunities. Then beyond that, it's how do you really think about creating real organic relationships? And that has to be like not just relationships for relationship's sake. And so that's where we really think about fostering community through things that people both care about and are excellent at. And so whether it's sort of more of a hackathon type event where we create opportunities for people to work together, albeit not in a paid context, or these, shared kind of like topical interest areas. So I mentioned a lot of people are founders in the community. We heard from the community, they really wanted to learn more about the venture side of the business, particularly like trends in investing in AI, machine learning, and data science. And so we have launched a series. We hosted in person here at our Brooklyn office, where we have top venture investors come in and talk about the landscape around data, AI, and ML. And initially, those started as like these people just talked at the audience. And now it's like a debate, right? Everyone kind of comes, they surface questions in advance, and no one is shy. It's like the venture, investor and the audience are peers. Because, once you're really bringing together a group of people that are at the top of their game, you should be creating opportunities for them to collaborate and really like have a different kind of conversation. And I think that's what we try to think about at Tribe is like, how can we create opportunities you can't get anywhere else? There are lots of talks where like investors come and talk at you. There aren't lots of talks where you get to go like head to head and like debate the future of large language models or moats, with the top, investor in your field.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, that definitely sounds like an interesting opportunity and something you can't find easily in other places. And yeah, absolutely. So, in just kind of summarizing your kind of mission with Tribe AI, and one thing, what if I understand correctly as well, you really want to kind of democratize almost the tech talent, especially email and data scientist engineer access to anyone, any type of company, right? Because until now, it typically was accessible to Google's and Apple's of the world. So, am I kind of interpreting that right? Maybe you can kind of summarize and where are you headed with Tribia and what's kind of the future look like,
Yeah.
especially now having kind of OpenAI democratizing access to AI and lots of companies starting to adopt. So where do you see that heading, and how do you see Tribe AI as part of that?
Yep. So it's really interesting. I think like the initial problem I saw was on the like need for access from companies to talent. Um, I now see it a little differently where we are this node for access, but for both sides. And our mission, more than democratizing access to this talent, our mission is really focused on the talent side of the business. And that's because what we've really learned is creating these opportunities for freedom for this top technical talent attracts the best people. It's really what this top tier of talent cares about. And if we can create the top destination for this technical specialized talent, we will continue to have and create this access point for companies. But our business is really built quite differently from others in that we are fully talent first. And so, at any marketplace, you have to pick one customer. You have two, we have to pick one. And our customer is this elite talent.
Right.
And so that really, like when we think about product, when we think about prioritization, that's our lens. And then our job is to ensure that we can deliver at the highest level, because if we don't have referenceability, then like the network effects from our business aren't going to work. So that becomes critical. But ultimately, everything follows from focusing on the engineers.
Yeah.
And that's really like everything we do has been built that way. And so, we spent a lot of time talking about community. We don't have a traditional community manager. We've tried that. We actually found it didn't work as well for us. It's something that like you really need to understand. What we can't have someone from the outside, working on solutions for this community. We really need to be building solutions they care about, which means they need to be actively participating in that. And we need to create opportunities for them to do the things that they care about and listen to those responses. But it needs to be much more organic, kind of like fostering that from bottoms up rather than a top down type of solution.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense, right? If and I love the focus, the very true focus on talent, because once you have that pool of talent and amazing people coming to you, then obviously, if those are the top talent and greatest engineers, then obviously the companies are going to be interested in working with those talent, and they will come to you as a result of
Yeah.
that. Awesome. One last topic I just want to dive into a bit is something that's, I think, really fascinating, especially for a company based in the US, like typically within a venture funded company, like funded companies, and within all of these big investor network where you easily would have access to any investment, right? What you have decided to do is you have self-funded Tribe AI, and it doesn't have any outside investor capital. Can you please share what are some of the key decisions you have made? First of all, why you made that decision in the first place, and then what are some
I'm
key
crazy.
decisions?
That's why.
Why? What are some key decisions you have made inside kind of the company, maybe operations or more decisions around the company to keep it lean, efficient, sustainable, and so that you can really continue operating and growing self-sustainably?
Yeah. I mean, I sort of joke that I'm crazy, but like I might be crazy. Because you're right. This is we kind of call this like playing the game on hard mode. The
By the way,
decision
I
to
think I think that's amazing. I always keep saying it, especially in today's modern era, like if people can do that, right? If there is no need for big capital or big amounts of resources for you to build the product, then you should definitely go for that because that's that's the bigger and the more free kind of the freedom that you talked about. It's also
yeah,
another type of freedom you have as a company.
yeah. I think you really nailed it. Right. We wanted to build a company that was built around this idea of freedom, which meant actually doing that not just for our talent but also for ourselves. And I have to say, like people like you, companies like Softer are what makes this even possible. So I can talk about the decisions that I made and how I thought about the trade-offs, but ultimately the only reason we're able to do this is because we didn't have to, right? From the beginning, my co-founder and myself are go-to-market people, really good at sales. We were able to get started by selling a product that didn't involve any upfront development. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't a lot that has been built, but and of course, in our case, we have access to hundreds of engineers, so we could build any solution we wanted. But just because you can build a solution doesn't mean you should. And so I really believe, and this is the approach we take with our customers also, that you have to show value first, right? And if you can build using off-the-shelf solutions and cut down your time to market, you should do that, right? Prove there's a
Absolutely.
there, prove there's value, get things up and running as quickly as you can. This is the value of working with people who have done it before, who understand the landscape of tooling, and to help you avoid costly, you know, overly complicated decisions. Google built its own CRM. Like, does that need to happen? I don't know. Of course, there are competitive questions, but this whole build versus buy debate that's happened throughout Silicon Valley, frankly, has, like, I think in many cases been motivated by just excess capital. Everyone has wanted to build historically. And the reality is, if you don't need to build that, it's a huge advantage. So Softer is an example of something that a tool that enabled us to build a really robust architecture by pulling together a bunch of pre-existing tools, customizing them for our needs, not rely on, at one time we used Salesforce, and not rely on all of these outside firms that have to make changes for you because it's really complicated to customize. Like, we have full control over our own product. And we were able to do it pretty cheaply and without leveraging our hundreds of engineers. Like, how incredible is that? Now, where we do need to build with engineering resources, we absolutely do, but you have to prove there's value there. And so we've been able to build, now it's a good word, before it was a bad word in venture, a profitable business from the beginning. We have found product market fit. We have a product, a solution that companies and talent are lining up for. And we've been able to do that by building tooling and underlying data infrastructure, but doing it in a really smart way. So now we absolutely have this amazing data asset. We are leveraging machine learning to run our own business. but we've done that without spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars on engineering. And so I think what you all do is amazing because it enables builders to build, even like if they're not technical, and even if they are technical, without wasting a lot of their
Exactly.
time, right? There's like so many other things they could be doing and should be doing.
Right. If you ask some of the top talent engineers you're working with, they definitely will tell that they don't like working on some of the most repetitive problems. Right. They keep working, but because they have to. But
It's the
they
point
rather
of
want
AI and machine learning.
exactly.
Like,
They
this
rather
is
would
where
want
I
to
get really
work on
excited.
harder and more difficult problems and leave the
Exactly.
rest for automation. Yeah, first of all, thank you for the kind words. Definitely appreciate also that there is, we're really excited to have Tribe using software for some of the internal tooling. I'm curious how, like, which percentage approximately of the tooling or maybe the platform, the product internally is built, just in terms of like percentage, which percentage is built kind of in-house with code and which part is built using automation and no-code tools.
I don't know that I can give you a percentage. I mean, we we got away with years of practically no code,
Yes.
which I think is really like that's kind of the more telling fact, right? We started Tribe in 2019. I don't think we really were doing like deeper engineering beyond some like light customization, which we can do through you guys, um, until probably this past year.
Amazing. Yeah.
I think like there's so and to be clear, we built a multi-million dollar business with like zero engineering resources allocated.
So, yeah,
So like
that's very important, right? That's kind
like
of,
it's
yes,
all
you have
possible
built
and had the resources to reinvest in engineering. We
exactly.
chose not to do that until recently where the needs justified it. And that's because our community has grown big enough. We needed more scale. We need to build for scale, which is just a different
Right.
beast now, right? And ensure that we are set up to build a real engine of growth, and scale with the demand on both sides of our business. But we were able to, get to millions on run rate with no engineering development. And obviously, I am biased because I am a very, very proud investor in software through Coalition. But I did not come to that as an investor first. We came to it as a customer first. Saw how amazing this tool was. And then I was so excited to meet you, and then get to work together in a different capacity. But it's because I saw the value firsthand. And that isn't just me. I'll also say, I talked about how so many builders in our community are founders, and many of them are also building no code tools. So it's sort of an interesting trend with really technical people, machine learning engineers, deep, talented engineers building no code solutions because they don't want to waste their time, as we talked about, right?
Exactly.
Everyone, this is like what Tribe tries to do, wants to do impactful work. And if they can create opportunities to do code once and enable that to scale to, tremendous value, and prevent that work from needing to be redone every time, that's like tremendous value for the ecosystem. It's tremendous value and support for other founders and for, frankly, our economy. And so there's so much value in building low code, no code. And I get really excited when I see technical teams working on these problems because I think it signals how important this will be for, the future of company building.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, as an engineer, ex-engineer, not coding anymore, I will absolutely agree. And I think your example of like using no-code tools and growing to like as a startup using no-code tools and growing to a certain like multi-million dollar business already without really needing to invest heavily in the engineering like tooling resources and building something, that already kind of is an iconic example for many founders on how kind of to leverage existing tooling, right, or existing opportunities, automation tools, and all that to really kind of prove concepts, prove that there's something behind, there's a business, there's the value, and then really from there, if they need to, then they can start building the actual product. Yeah, that's kind of one aspect where I really love to see more and more founders leveraging no-code platforms. And then in the other aspect, especially within kind of bigger companies, where still, the bigger problem there as well is the shortage of engineering talent, right? As you saw yourself,
Right.
a shortage of ML engineers and data scientists, but even more any type of engineer in fact, and
And
that
many of them,
also
they
in
can have big engineering teams. Oh my gosh, is this what you want them working on? Come on. Like,
exactly right.
right? This like infrastructure is possible without them. Go put them on your hardest problems. Talented people, shouldn't be optimizing things that already exist.
Yeah, totally. Amazing. So one last question for me. So with all of these kind of advancements in no code, AI, and the like kind of opening up the possibilities for lots of companies to really leverage data, what do you think is kind of how big the need will become to leverage data and AI in any company? Like whether there's on their services or products, really they use AI and data to stay ahead of the curve. We get that question a lot as well. Are you going to incorporate AI
Yeah.
into software, etc.? But in general, even if you are not a tech company, like what do you see? Where do you see it going, and how big the need will become? Where I think also Tribe will play a big role in the future.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm increasingly seeing AI and machine learning automation is just like the next wave of software. Like this is just an extension of SaaS. We're talking about leveraging, like today as an investor, every pitch deck I've seen over the last few months has AI in it. Okay. Well, like probably like every pitch deck in the past had, cloud based in it. Right now, if that came through my desk and someone said like I'm a cloud based company,
Yeah,
freaking cares, right? Of course you are. Well, that's how I
that's
feel
by
about
default, right? That's expected already. It's not.
exactly. It's
Yeah,
expected. It's
that's the
normal. Now,
norm.
granted, there actually are lots of companies still on prem, and probably even more so now. So that's actually like a separate, fascinating trend with like all the cloud wars going on right now. But this really like I don't believe this is a fad. The rate of innovation I'm seeing at the startup level, leveraging AI and machine learning from the beginning of these businesses is so great, so powerful. Like they are coming for the incumbents. The incumbents are legacy players. They are also the Googles, et cetera, of the world. And this is going to be fascinating because there's pressure bottoms up and there's pressure top down. And not only am I seeing this pressure from startups, but the Googles of the world, my gosh, they're hustling on these AI solutions. And then the legacy players don't want to get left behind. They're all working on AI ML solutions. So we are talking about large tax firms that are building AI and generative AI solutions. We're talking about law firms that are doing it. These are just businesses that if you had told me they were, really going AI first a few months ago, a year ago, it would have been shocking. And I think this is really dramatically accelerating this change, which really is that I think AI is going to be a bright spot in the tech economy and the future of how products are built. And I think that like you guys integrating with OpenAI, it makes perfect sense because these integrations, these rails need to exist. And you are doing an incredible job of creating opportunities for people to do that without the need of these robust engineering teams. And then similarly, where companies need access to that, right? Tribe is just plugging in. And so we are working with the large infrastructure foundational model companies. We're working with the generative application companies. We're working with the legacy players. So we're sort of seeing the whole ecosystem, which is really what makes me incredibly bullish. And so I'm very bullish on where this is going. And I think you asked me earlier on where is Tribe going within all of this. And the way I sort of see Tribe is talent, and particularly, specialized talent is really the infrastructure layer that will enable this change. And so the way I'm really thinking about Tribe is sort of the fulfillment layer for this shift to AI and machine learning first businesses.
Nice. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and really very insightful conversation. Really enjoyed it. Hope our audience also will enjoy it as much as I did. Where can people learn more about you, Jaclyn?
Come hang out on LinkedIn,
In the
Jaclyn
nice
Rice
office in the
Nelson.
background. Also in the nice when there is well, you mentioned there is some interesting also meetups and gatherings
Yeah,
there for
yeah,
especially the community people, but
that's
maybe
right.
some people are also maybe interested in joining Tribe. So
Yes.
yeah.
Tribe.ai/join or /apply is where you can learn more about joining the community. There is also probably an ability to sign up on our website for our newsletters and to be on our events list here in New York. And then if you want to be a customer of Tribes, there's also a sign up on our homepage. Or you can feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or my email, Jaclyn@tribe.ai. So it was so much fun hanging out with you. I'm an enormous software fan. I love what you're doing, both through the company, but also through this podcast, in really scaling resources around go-to-market and thinking about this bottoms-up growth. Anyway, I hope to continue our conversation always and hear from many of the listeners as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Jaclyn. Thank you for the kind words and really glad, excited to have you. Thank you. Bye-bye.